This is how to discuss politics without wanting to kill someone. Hi, I'm Jess, a communications and political science undergraduate at URI. This is part of my honors project, How to Discuss Politics Without Wanting to Kill Someone. Instead of doing a paper, I chose to do a video series. I picked how to kill the murderous impulse in politics because it's an issue. Our entire legislative system is built on cooperation between opposing political sides. Together they determine the best solution by bringing together what each person knows and their experiences to pass the best policy for their constituents, the public. That is not the case right now. There are no real discussions between sides where people can talk with one another. We're talking at each other in competition. This political competition culture, getting caught up in the horse races and who is the right one, has contributed to political gridlock on a national scale and people refusing to listen to people of different views on a personal level. This prevents us from finding common ground and getting policy done. The focus of my method is how to humanize people and to get us to see one another as decision makers with their own rationale, rather than obstacles to overcome or mindless sheep or even the enemy. I know this won't overcome the issue, but it is a start. When people are human, we understand how they came to their conclusions, not as demons or with malicious intent towards us. We have a better chance at working with them when they are not the enemy, but someone to work with. This gives us a better shot at making something that addresses everyone's concerns. This is how we make better policy, collectively, not competitively. Then we work together, collectively, rather than competitively, to create the best policy. Here are the abridged versions of the theories I used for this project. Moral framework theory. This is when we select the most important moral framework of our intended audience as a lens to see the topic through and use this to build our argument to be more persuasive. Morals foundation theory. There are universal moral foundations that each culture and people in these cultures build their values on. Burke's rhetorical theory, specifically Burke's pentad regarding attitude and how a person comes into the situation and the purpose of the actions a person takes were used to develop these guidelines. Ethical relativism, specifically from Desoilogoi. It boils down to the fact that labels are given by how they affect the person in question. What's good for me may not be good for you. We have to find and explain how it is good and bad, and then explain why one outweighs the other in a given situation, especially if it is counterintuitive. The blowback effect. A negotiator's misrepresented anger creates an action-reaction cycle that results in genuine anger and diminishes trust in all involved. Effective polarization. More or less, we accept members of our group but reject people who are not members of our group. In politics, this means Democrats and Republicans are less likely to intermingle. According to Webster and Abramowitz in 2007, this is driven by sincere disagreements over policy. Nonviolent communication. Everyone is capable of compassion and empathy, and we only harm others when we don't see other ways to meet our needs, which include being understood, listened to, and having our concerns addressed. 4 main parts are observing what is happening, being aware of emotions felt, determining what needs are not being met, and requesting specific actions for those needs to be met. Motivated listening. We make decisions based on our emotions. There was one paper, How Ideology Fueled Effective Polarization, whose end bothered me. The author said that rational dislike due to deep ideological differences would be more difficult to overcome than irrational dislike. It's been the opposite in my experience, and I don't know, maybe I'm just an outlier or it's how I approach these conversations that changed my experiences. I'm going to assume part of it is how I approach these conversations for the purpose of this method. Usually explaining why people held a different stance than me on a given issue and understanding this other side made it easier for me to see where they were coming from and helped me find possible solutions that met both of our concerns. In my experience, irrational dislike was always harder for me than rational dislike, especially as irrational often involved what a word meant. These theories in my experiences inform the method I chose, rhetorical analysis that I used to determine what strategies worked and what needed to be done to make them work. I analyzed 6 speeches that became popular for either the guns right or gun control groups for consistent logic on each side, and determined what assumptions were being made. These and the theories above, and my own experience with political discussions, led to the guidelines. 2. Always act in good faith. 3. Set ground rules for the discussion. 4. State your intention. 5. Find shared goals to build common ground and focus on the discussion. 6. Drop whatever is getting in the way of these shared goals. 7. Avoid attacks and being defensive. 8. Be considerate of their reasoning and worldview. 9. Speak to them using their words and what fits in their worldview. 10. Explain explicitly. Minimize what is left up for interpretation. 11. Never assume understanding. Give them room for questions and comments. 12. Ask questions about your interpretation of their words and concerns. 13. Listen to their words and concerns. 14. Address their concerns directly. Thanks for listening. I hope these were helpful. These guidelines are explained and expanded upon in other videos.